Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm a mom of three kids. My youngest just turned 8 months old, and for the longest time, we'd been using this old stroller that had been passed down through our family. That thing had seen better days. Wheels wobbling, the handle getting loose, and the folding mechanism barely working anymore. My oldest daughter had used it, then my middle child, and now my baby. It had served us well for years, but it was time to retire the poor thing before it completely fell apart with my baby in it. So that morning, I decided to make a quick trip to the store to grab a new stroller. My oldest daughter, who's 15, was watching the baby while I ran out. I figured it would be simple. Get in, find a decent stroller, pay for it, and head home. The whole thing shouldn't take more than 30 minutes. The store had exactly what I needed. There was this display model stroller that was the last one in stock, already assembled and ready to go. Perfect. I paid for it and started pushing it through the parking lot toward my car. Everything was going smoothly until I reached my parking spot. There was this woman in a huge black car parked right behind my car, completely blocking me in. I looked around the parking lot and saw plenty of empty spaces she could have used instead. I figured maybe she just didn't realize she was blocking someone. I walked up to her and politely asked if she could move so I could get out. I pointed toward my car, trying to be friendly about it. She looked up from her phone, gave me this look like I was bothering her for no reason, then went right back to scrolling. I tried again, explaining that the car behind her was mine and I needed to leave. This time she didn't even acknowledge me, just kept staring at her phone like I wasn't even standing there. Now I should mention something important here. I used to have serious anger management problems. When I found out I was pregnant with my youngest, I knew I had to get help. I didn't want my kids growing up with a mom who couldn't control her temper. I went to therapy, learned coping strategies, and have been doing really well for over a year. I was proud of how much progress I'd made, so instead of losing it right there, I took a deep breath and decided to handle this the right way. I walked over to the security booth and explained the situation to the guard on duty. The security guard was really understanding and agreed to help me out. He said it wouldn't be a problem and offered to come talk to her himself. He walked back with me to where my car was parked. The whole time I was still pushing the stroller since I couldn't even get close enough to my car to put it away. The security guard approached the woman and explained that she needed to move her car so I could get to mine. He told her that she was actually parked illegally and that since she was blocking another customer, he needed to ask her to move. He pointed out that there were plenty of open parking spots she could use instead. That's when everything changed. This woman, who had been ice cold and ignoring us, suddenly turned bright red. I could see her hands gripping the steering wheel, and she was staring at us with pure hatred in her eyes, but she still didn't say anything. When what felt like forever passed, she finally put her car in reverse and moved back a little bit. It was still tight, but I thought maybe I could squeeze out if I was careful. The security guard offered to help me get the stroller into my car. He was being really nice about the whole thing, and we started discussing whether it would fit better in the trunk or the back seat. That's when everything went completely wrong. Without any warning, the woman in the car slammed on her gas pedal and drove straight into both of us. The impact sent me flying backward, and I heard the security guard yell when he got hit too. The stroller took most of the impact and got completely crushed underneath her car. I didn't lose consciousness, but I was definitely hurt. The security guard was groaning nearby, and he looked worse off than me. But what hit me hardest wasn't the physical pain, it was the realization of what this woman had just done. She had no idea that the stroller was empty. For all she knew, my baby was inside when she decided to run us down with her car. That thought broke something inside me. All the anger management work, all the progress I'd made, all the control I'd learned, it all disappeared in an instant. I wasn't thinking about my therapy or my coping strategies. I was thinking about what would have happened if my baby had been in that stroller. I saw her starting to open her car door, probably to check the damage to her vehicle. I didn't wait for her to get out. I grabbed her by the hair and yanked her out of the car, threw her down on the asphalt, and started hitting her with everything I had. I wasn't myself in that moment. The rational part of my brain was completely gone, replaced by this pure rage that I'd never felt before. I kept thinking about my baby, about what could have happened, about this woman's complete disregard for human life. The next thing I remember clearly was waking up in an ambulance. The EMTs were checking me over, and I could hear sirens in the distance. Then everything went black again. I woke up the next day in a hospital bed with my husband and daughters sitting beside me. The doctors had told my husband I was lucky, just bruises and some minor cuts from the impact. Nothing broken, no internal injuries. My husband filled me in on what happened when I lost control. More security guards had rushed over and pulled me off the woman. The police and ambulances arrived shortly after. All three of us, me, the security guard, and the woman who hit us, ended up being taken to the hospital. Turns out I'd broken her nose and left her face pretty beaten up. I'm not proud of that, but I also can't say I felt sorry for her. The investigation was thorough. The security cameras had caught everything. Her blocking my car, ignoring our requests, and then deliberately driving into us. The security guard and I both gave statements to the detectives. In the end, the woman was charged with attempted murder. The prosecutor argued that driving a vehicle into pedestrians was clearly an attempt to cause serious harm or death. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison. I didn't face any charges. The prosecutor explained that my actions were clearly self-defense and defense of others, and that any reasonable person would have reacted similarly when deliberately hit by a car. I'm back home now with my family, and I did get a new stroller eventually. But I'm also back in anger management therapy. What happened that day scared me. Not just the physical attack, but how quickly I lost control. I never want my kids to see me like that again. The security guard recovered fully, and the store actually gave me a replacement stroller free of charge when they heard what happened. Small gestures, but they meant a lot during a difficult time. I'm a 30-year-old teacher who moved across the country 5 years ago to start fresh after my divorce. My ex-husband and I were high school sweethearts who got married way too young. By 25, we were divorced after years of fighting and growing apart. No cheating, no abuse, just two people who brought out the worst in each other. I moved away, got a new job, and hadn't spoken to him since. My brother and I have always been close. He's 3 years older and was my rock through the divorce. So when he called me a few weeks before his wedding to ask me to be a bridesmaid, I was thrilled. We were on a video call with him and his fiancée, talking about dress colors and wedding plans, when he dropped the bomb. He said he hoped it wouldn't cause any issues, but he wanted to ask my ex-husband to be one of his groomsmen. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I asked him what he meant and why he would even consider this. He explained that my ex had been his friend too, and they had stayed close all these years. I was stunned and asked since when this had been happening, pointing out that he had never mentioned it to me once in 5 years. His fiancée chimed in and said they thought I knew, mentioning that the two men hung out pretty regularly. My own brother had been secretly maintaining a friendship with my ex-husband and never told me. It felt like a complete betrayal. I told him that all this time when I was crying to him about the divorce and struggling to rebuild my life, he was buddies with my ex behind my back. My brother tried to defend himself by saying their friendship had nothing to do with me and my ex. I shot back that my ex was my former husband, so how could it have nothing to do with me? The conversation went downhill from there. I tried to explain how uncomfortable it would make me. There would be rehearsal dinners, photos, dancing, all sorts of activities where we'd be forced together for hours. I told him that if he insisted on having my ex as a groomsman, I wouldn't be a bridesmaid and might not even be able to come to the wedding at all. My brother told me not to be dramatic and reminded me that it was just one day and we were both adults. I asked him if he thought protecting my mental health was dramatic. The next day, my younger sister called me. She said our mother had told her about the wedding drama and that I needed to grow up and stop being so petty. I told her she had no idea what I went through during that divorce. She reminded me that was 5 years ago and said I could handle being in the same room as him for a few hours. I explained to her that it wasn't about being in the same room, What about being forced to smile and pretend everything was fine while standing next to someone who represented the worst period of my life? Then my mother called. She said my brother's wedding should be a happy occasion and that I was letting my past ruin his special day. I told her I wasn't ruining anything but was setting boundaries for my own well-being. She said that sometimes we have to make sacrifices for family. I asked her what about the sacrifice he was asking me to make and why his friendship with my ex was more important than my comfort. The calls kept coming. My brother called again trying to bargain with me. He suggested we could make sure my ex and I didn't have to talk, or that we could be seated at opposite ends during dinner. I told him he didn't get it, and that it wasn't about logistics, but about the fact that he had chosen my ex over me. My brother insisted he wasn't choosing anyone over anyone, and that he wanted us both there. I told him he couldn't have both, and I wasn't putting myself through that emotional torture. My sister called again the next day, this time with my mother on speakerphone. She said everyone thought I was being unreasonable. My mother added that they just wanted the family to be together for this special day. I told them that maybe they should have thought about that before maintaining a secret friendship with my ex. My sister argued that he wasn't just my ex, but had been part of their lives too. I reminded her that he was in their lives for only 2 years, while I was their sister for life. The pressure from my family was relentless. They made me feel like I was some petty, immature person who couldn't handle being civil for one day. But they didn't understand what it was like to have your trust broken by the person you thought would always have your back. After weeks of sleepless nights and constant stress, I made my final decision. I called my brother one last time and told him I loved him and wanted him to be happy, but I wouldn't be a bridesmaid if my ex was a groomsman. I said I would come as a guest if he wanted, but that was my final answer. My brother said fine, and if that was how I wanted to be, then fine. The day of the wedding arrived. I showed up in a simple dress watching from the back, while my ex stood next to my brother at the altar. My family barely spoke to me. During the reception, I sat alone at a table in the back while everyone else celebrated. Then something happened that I never expected. During the speeches, my ex got up to speak when the best man. He started talking about my brother and their friendship, but then he said something that made my blood boil. He acknowledged that some people there might wonder why he was standing up there, given his history with the bride's sister-in-law. He said he held no grudges and hoped I didn't either, adding that sometimes we have to put the past behind us for the people we love. He looked directly at me when he said it. The entire room turned to stare at me. I felt humiliated and exposed. He was making me look like the villain in front of everyone. But then, my brother's best friend from college, who had flown in from overseas, stood up during the open mic portion. He said he wanted to say something and that he had known the groom for 15 years, watching him be an amazing brother to his sister. But he said that tonight, he was disappointed. He explained that a real brother would never force his sister to choose between her emotional well-being and his wedding. And a real friend wouldn't use a wedding speech to take passive-aggressive shots at someone who was already hurting. The room went silent. My ex's face turned red. My brother looked mortified. The best friend continued, saying he thought we all needed to remember that loyalty to family should come first, and protecting the people we love shouldn't be negotiable. He raised his glass toward me and nodded. Several other guests followed suit. It was the first time all night that someone had stood up for me. After the reception, my brother approached me when I was leaving. He said maybe we needed to talk about this more. I told him maybe we did, but not tonight. I had just moved to the city 3 weeks earlier after dropping out of college. My parents weren't exactly thrilled about my decision, but I couldn't handle the pressure anymore. I was working dead-end retail jobs just to pay rent for my tiny studio apartment. The pay was terrible, but it was all I could get without a degree. That particular morning, I was running late for my shift at a clothing store downtown. My phone's GPS had been acting up for days, giving me wrong directions left and right. I rushed down to the subway platform and jumped on what I thought was the right train. Only after we'd been moving for 10 minutes did I realize I was going in the completely wrong direction. I was already going to be late, so I figured I'd ride to the next stop and catch a train back. That's when she got on. This woman, probably in her 50s, stepped onto the train with this air of superiority. She looked around like everyone on the train was beneath her. I was just minding my own business, checking my phone to see how late I was going to be, when she zeroed in on me. She walked up to me and told me I was sitting in her seat. I looked up thinking maybe she needed directions or something and asked her what she meant. I looked around, confused. It was a regular subway train with bench seating. There were no assigned seats, and honestly, the train was only about half full. She explained that she rode this train every Tuesday at this exact time, and she always sat in that exact spot. She claimed she had been doing it for 15 years. She was talking about a public train seat like it was her personal property. I told her I was sorry, but it was just a regular seat and there were plenty of other spots available. She said that I didn't understand. She emphasized that she always sat there and it was her seat. The way she said it made it clear she wasn't going to let this go. Other passengers were starting to look over and I could feel my face getting red. I was already having a terrible morning, and now this. I told her that she didn't own this seat because it was public transportation. That's when she really lost it. She yelled at me not to tell her what she could and couldn't do. She shouted that she paid her taxes and had been riding this line since before I was probably even born. She was getting louder, and people were definitely staring now. I just wanted to get to work and deal with my own problems. I said I understood she liked this seat, but I was there first today. I pointed out that there were literally empty seats just a few feet away. She screamed that she didn't want those seats, she wanted that seat. Then she asked if I had any idea who she was. I told her no and that I didn't really care. Wrong thing to say. She said that her husband was a lawyer and she could have me arrested for harassment. I asked her if that was for sitting on a train seat. She accused me of being hostile and threatening. I wasn't being hostile at all. I was actually being pretty patient considering how crazy this whole situation was. But she kept going. She said that she was calling the police. She actually pulled out her phone and started dialing. Someone would call the police over a subway seat. I asked her if she was seriously calling the cops because I wouldn't give up a public seat that she didn't own. She called the police and told them she needed assistance. She lied and said there was a young man on the train who was threatening her and wouldn't leave her alone. That's when I realized she was actually lying to the police. I started recording on my phone. I told her I was recording this and that she had just lied to the police. She yelled at me to stop recording her and claimed it was illegal. I told her that it wasn't illegal because we were in public. The train started slowing down for the next stop. I figured this was my chance to get away from this crazy situation. She shouted at me not to get off the train because the police were coming. I stood up to leave, and she actually grabbed my arm. I told her to let go of me. She said I wasn't going anywhere until the police got there. Now she was actually putting her hands on me. Other passengers were watching this whole thing unfold. One passenger told her to leave me alone and that I hadn't done anything wrong. She yelled at them to mind their own business and claimed I had been threatening her. Another passenger said they all saw what happened and that she was the one causing problems. The train stopped and the doors opened. I pulled my arm away and stepped off, but she followed me onto the platform, still yelling. She screamed for police help and claimed that I had assaulted her. There happened to be 2 transit police officers on the platform. They came over to see what was going on. One officer asked what the situation was. She told them that I had threatened her and assaulted her. She demanded that they arrest me. The other officer asked me what happened. I explained that I was sitting on the train and she demanded I give up my seat because she claimed it was hers. I told them that when I wouldn't move, she called the police and lied about me threatening her. Then she grabbed my arm when I tried to leave. I showed them the recording on my phone. Both officers watched it and their expressions changed pretty quickly. The first officer told her there was no assigned seating on public trains. She said that she always sat there and it had been her seat for 15 years. The second officer explained that this didn't give her the right to that seat, and she definitely couldn't grab someone who was trying to leave. She claimed I had been threatening. The first officer said they had just watched the video and that she was the one being aggressive. The officers explained to her that she couldn't claim ownership of public seats and that filing false police reports was actually illegal. They told her that if she kept harassing people, she could be the one getting arrested. Her whole attitude changed when she realized the police weren't on her side. She started backtracking, saying it was all a misunderstanding, but the damage was done. The second officer said they were going to need to see some ID. Turns out, when they ran her information, she had an outstanding warrant for unpaid parking tickets. The officers had to arrest her right there on the platform. When they were putting her in handcuffs, she was still yelling about how this was all my fault and that her husband would sue everyone. The last thing I heard her say was something about how she'd make sure I never rode that train line again. I finally made it to work 3 hours late, but my manager was pretty understanding when I explained what happened and showed him the video. He actually thought it was hilarious that someone tried to claim ownership of a subway seat. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.